Welcome to Speak English Now podcast with your host, Georgiana, the podcast that will help you to speak English fluently with no grammar and no textbooks.
Hi everyone, I'm Georgiana, founder of SpeakEnglishPodcast.com. My mission is to help you speak English fluently. In this episode, I'll talk about the importance of moving and studying English. After that, we'll practice grammar with a point of view story. Okay, let's get started. Let me ask you a question. Imagine a person learning English. He or she is preparing to study a new lesson. How do you picture the scene? Perhaps this person sitting at home or in a quiet library with an open textbook, a dictionary, and a notebook. Maybe this person has been sitting for hours, almost motionless, trying to learn and memorize the content. At least that's the typical image that pops into my mind whenever I imagine an English student following the traditional method. Now let's visualize a different scene. Imagine someone walking around. Their whole body's moving. The feet transmit movement to the legs and to the entire body. The arms are swinging slightly and the brain receives more oxygen. You can't be too lethargic when you walk, can you? For me, this second state is the perfect one for learning. The brain's more awake and it can acquire new knowledge faster. And there's no need to carry around any textbooks, notebooks, dictionaries, pencils, etc. That wouldn't be practical at all while you're walking, and people might start pointing you on the street as if you were some lunatic. I'm sure that if you've been following me for some time now, you already know that there's a much more efficient way to learn English. You can now improve your English considerably by listening to interesting audios. There's no need to sit in a chair and listen to my podcast or my audio lessons. The only thing you need is your cell phone and your favorite earphones. Start taking a nice walk every day and improve your English skills at the same time. In fact, the question and answer lessons are designed in such a manner so that you can simulate a conversation in English wherever you are and whenever you get some spare time. You'll learn English faster than ever and you'll get in a great shape too. You can't ask for more, can you? Haven't I convinced you yet? Let me tell you about famous people who did noteworthy things when they walked by. Aristotle, the famous Greek philosopher, instructed his students while strolling. His students were called peripatetics, which means walking about in Greek. And Charles Dickens got to know London while he was walking every day for 5 hours. These walks also helped the author relieve his anxiety. Beethoven, regardless of the weather, enjoyed taking long walks. These walks were essential for his creativity. He would always carry a pen and sheets of music paper. Sigmund Freud sometimes treated his patients during long walks. Nietzsche considered walking a necessary precondition for his writing. Every day he would set off on a 2-hour walk with his notebook. Tchaikovsky, after moving to a quiet village outside Moscow, he went for 2-hour walks every day. He's even been criticized by some friends for taking walks in severe weather. Nonetheless, he needed the walks to preserve his mental energy and to keep his mind sharp. Albert Einstein often felt like he needed to take a long walk on the beach to work out complex problems in his head. Steve Jobs was famous for his long walks, which he used for exercise, contemplation, problem solving, and even meetings. Jobs found that his meetings away from the office helped him concentrate on the meeting and nothing else. Now that you've gotten inspired by all these great men, start learning English while doing something positive for your health. Okay, let's move on to the next section. Let's practice some grammar with the point of view technique. The main benefit of this technique is that it'll help you to learn grammar intuitively without boring exercises or memorizing rules. This is how it works. I'll tell you a short story more than one time. Every time I'll change a grammar point. For example, I can change the tense or the person. This way, you'll intuitively recognize the changes. Okay? Let's start. Okay, let's start. The story happened in the past. Mia was an excellent English student. She didn't learn alone, but she did it with her friend Carol. They both studied English together. They met every Thursday afternoon at the library. They were there for 5 hours. They studied in silence, and 7 out of 10 times they fell asleep. They were always sitting for too long in the same position. One day, Carol had an idea. She suggested to her friend that, in order not to fall asleep, they could take a walk and study at the same time. Mia thought it was an excellent idea. They met again, like they always did every Thursday. They were carrying their books, notebooks, and pencils. Very soon they realized that it wasn't such a great idea after all. Mia said, "It's so hard to carry all of these things and walk at the same time." Carol agreed with her. One day, Mia found the Speak English Now podcast. The podcast had a different approach. Instead of carrying all these books, notebooks, and pencils, they just needed to listen to the weekly episodes. It was so much easier for the two friends to walk and learn English by listening to the podcast. They would do so, and they were learning much faster, had a better time learning English, and lost a lot of weight. Now imagine the situation as something hypothetical. If I wrote a story about two students, it would be Mia and Carol. Mia would be an excellent English student. She wouldn't learn alone, but she would do it with her friend Carol. They would both study English together. They would meet every Thursday afternoon at the library. They would be there for 5 hours. They would study in silence, and 7 out of 10 times they would fall asleep. They would always sit for too long in the same position. One day, Carol would have an idea. She would suggest to her friend that in order not to fall asleep, they could walk and study at the same time. Mia would think it would be a good idea. They would meet again like they always do every Thursday. They would carry their books, notebooks, and pencils. Very soon, they would realize that it wouldn't be such a great idea after all. Mia would say, "It's so hard to carry all these and walk at the same time." Carol would say Mia was right. One day, Mia would find the Speak English Now podcast. The podcast would have a different approach. Instead of carrying all those books, notebooks, and pencils, they would just need to listen to the weekly episodes. It would be so much easier for the two friends to walk and learn English by listening to the podcast. They would do so and learn much faster, would have a better time, and lose a lot of weight. Okay, this is the end of this short lesson. And it's one of the techniques that I use in my courses. I recommend you to take a look at courses.speakenglishpodcast.com. Okay, this is the end of this episode. Remember to listen to it several times. It will help you with your English. See you soon and have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.
Did you enjoy today's episode? Get the transcript now at speakenglishpodcast.com. speakenglishpodcast.com.